Welcome to this very special Hannity conversation, Radical Islam and America. Now, we were promised that al-Qaeda was on the run. We were told that America was more secure because Osama bin Laden was dead. And we were even led to believe that ISIS was nothing more than a JV team of wannabe terrorists, but with extremists on the march all around the globe. And as our own homeland comes under attack, it's time for us to come together, time for us to unite to confront this growing threat. Because make no mistake about it, radical Islam has reached the shores of the United States of America.
Terror attack at the Boston Marathon. A White House spokesman says the explosions in Boston are, quote, clearly an act of terror.
This is a Fox News alert. The U.S. military says 12 people were killed this afternoon and 31 wounded when at least one soldier opened fire at Fort Hood Army Base in Texas.
This is a Fox News alert, a beheading right here in America, in Oklahoma.
Is that him back?
Yeah, it sounds like he's running around out here.
Okay.
And that's a gunshot.
Woman decapitated, and then the killer took his knife for a second woman, stabbing her, and now new fears that the suspect is linked to Islamic extremism.
The tragic events out of Boston, Fort Hood, Oklahoma, and elsewhere prove that the threat that is posed by radical Islam is real, which is exactly why, over the course of the next hour, we're going to confront this issue head-on. But before I bring in our star-studded VIP panel, let's first take a look at a newly released AP poll. Now, it reveals that only 19% of Americans are extremely confident that the government can effectively minimize a threat that is now posed by a terrorist attack. And let's be honest. Who can blame them? For years, President Obama has downplayed the threat that is posed by al-Qaeda, and when ISIS began to gain traction, he dismissed them as the JV team. Here's what I mean.
Osama bin Laden is no longer a threat to our country. We've put al-Qaeda on the path to defeat.
We ended the war in Iraq, refocused our attention on those who actually killed us on 9/11. And as a consequence, al-Qaeda's core leadership has been decimated.
If we are joined by the international community, we can continue to shrink ISIL's sphere of influence, its effectiveness, its financing, its military capabilities, to the point where it is a manageable problem.
All right, pretty scary from the man who's responsible for keeping Americans safe. And on that note, let's start this Hannity conversation on radical Islam and America. Tonight, my distinguished panel for the entire hour includes the co-host of The Five, Bob Beckel, the president and founder of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy and author of A Battle for the Soul of Islam. Dr. Zuhdi Jasser is with us. And also with us is Indianapolis area Imam, that's Mohammed Sadiq, and Fox News military analyst Colonel David Hunt. I got to start with this. Was Fort Hood an act of terrorism? Was Boston an act of terrorism? Was Oklahoma the beheading an act of terrorism?
Yeah, clearly.
All examples of terrorism.
And he called it something different with politics. I mean, we called it a workplace violence in Fort Hood. It was ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. 13 dead, 30 injured. Allahu Akbar, the guy says, is Major Hassan.
Clearly an act of terrorism, as obviously the Boston Marathon.
Imam?
I can't say what it is. I can say what it isn't. It has nothing to do with Islam. But I can say it was a terroristic act. I can also say it was a horrible act, and it's something we all appall and can't stand.
How can you say it's nothing? Are radical Islamists, those that believe in jihad against the infidels, those that want holy war, those that view apostates as having to be killed and death should be to apostates, are they not radical Islamists?
No, you can't. I keep trying to tell you, Sean, you cannot put Islam and radicalism together.
Why not? Is there no such thing as radical Islam?
No. Islam was revealed by God. You cannot take God's word and then take something from the world and put it with God's word.
But if people use Islam and the Quran to justify the killing of innocent men, women, and children, and they are promised 72 virgins in heaven. Is that not radical Islam?
No, they use their understanding of Islam to do what they want.
Now we're parsing words. Zudi Jasser.
Yeah, I mean, Sean, it's so important to take the opposite approach of what my friend Imam Sadiq is doing here, because you can't treat the problem unless you diagnose it. And the diagnosis is political Islam, the ideology that permeated the Brotherhood that won an election in Egypt, the Islamic Republic of Iran, the Islamist Wahhabis of Saudi Arabia. All over the Muslim world, you've got this ideology that's thriving, that some say, yes, the violent component might be 5 to 10%, but the political ideology has won elections. And this is what drives, this is why it's so important to call Fort Hood terrorism. Terrorism is about...
And Oklahoma, terrorism.
Exactly, because it's violence that seeks a political ends. Whether it's a beheading, whether it's Fort Hood, whether it's the Boston bombing, these are individuals that have a virus that didn't come out of thin air. It's political Islamism. The Brotherhood's virus gets into their mind, and they become anti-Western, anti-liberty, anti-American, and they commit a random act of violence.
And this is your religion.
It's not my Islam, but I'm adult enough.
Muslim.
Exactly.
That's what I mean.
I'm adult enough to say that it is a version of Islam, that if this country doesn't start targeting as far as the ideology, we're going to continue to get
hit. Is it not just this country? It is also the entire world that needs to confront radical Islam. Bob Beckel, we don't agree on a whole lot. You have said, I want to open up my show, The Five, and provide a forum for moderate Muslims to confront and condemn radical Islam.
Well, I'm not overstating the case. I was the first one on this network to come out strongly on this issue. And my point was that if you look at Boston and if you look at 9/11, those two particularly, there was not a single head of a Muslim state, not a single imam, not a single cleric, not a single person of any standing in the community in the Middle East who ever said they thought this was wrong, that it was not the following, that the Prophet would not have approved of it. And I said one thing very bluntly, which got me in a lot of trouble, but I'm going to repeat it. If you don't speak out, you either agree with these people or you're cowards.
Well, all right. Those that are watching the hijacking of their religion, that don't have the more radical interpretation of the Quran, because you can interpret things any way you want, I guess. Those that take jihad seriously, infidels seriously, holy war seriously, and take neither Christians nor Jews, and we'll get into this in more detail, are they afraid, or it seems there can only be one of two things, Dr. Jasser. Either they're afraid that they will be targeted and labeled an apostate, and we know if you're labeled an apostate, the penalty of which is death, or are they silently supportive, perhaps, of that interpretation of Islam?
Well, I think it's all of the above. I think there are components of those of us that are trying to reform, that see what happens to people like me that speak up and get targeted and
How many fatwas have been put out on you?
Yeah, I mean, I can't tell you the number of times that Islamists target me as being not a Muslim or some type of tool or any other way to avoid the message, which is that we need reform, and I do it from a position of love within my faith. But with all due respect to my friend Bob, the left has, and why aren't you waking up your friends on the left? They have prevented us from having the conversation. We need a this is not a partisan issue. The feminists, the gay rights movements, and all others that the left values.
Under Sharia, gays are killed.
Exactly.
Women don't have rights to drive. They have to be covered.
Before you make a broad statement like that, it was, I put my liberal credentials up against anybody, and it was a liberal who spoke out on this network first, not a single conservative.
I hate to tell you, I was right there.
You were there. You were. I agree.
Do it on the left.
What we have to do here is recognize this is not a liberal conservative issue. It requires us to say in unison that we are a country that is under attack by individuals, by organizations, by others.
By an ideology.
But can I just take the workplace violence for a second? The one thing I will say to defend the Justice Department, if you declare it an act of terror, it doesn't fall under the Patriot Act. Or it does fall under the Patriot Act, and that means it would be much more difficult to have this guy convicted. If it's workplace violence, it's easier to have them.
But let me just stop you. But the president,
I think that's right.
The official line of the administration is that Fort Hood is workplace violence, and that Oklahoma, they refuse to say an act of terrorism. So you're at odds with a president that you're pretty supportive of.
I want to hear what
but stick with that. You're at odds with a president you generally support a lot.
I believe that it was an act of terror, but I believe it's easier to prosecute if you call it workplace violence.
But
and it's easier to see
the first report on Fort Hood didn't even use the word Islam, jihad, Salafi. His name wasn't even in it. And then the William Webster report, 2.5 years, some of the ideologies, but it is just, I think, absurd and insanity that we're not addressing the ideology of jihadism. We're not doing it.
It's not more difficult, Bob. And the problem is that the Justice Department has drug its feet, as the Department of the Army has, on prosecuting this guy. I don't care if you call it stealing cats and dogs. The guy should be in jail, should have been executed a long time ago for what he did. So the definition, my problem was that it was so obvious not to call it an act of terror and to go to workplace violence. The problem with both definitions is that the government has not prosecuted this guy.
Yeah, but
we just haven't.
Why can't we just start? You know, I mean, okay, I think we're at the, and they live happily ever after. Whatever happened to once upon a time? You know, meaning, where does the story start? We all agree. We're Americans. I'm an American. Let's understand that we're all in agreement, I believe, that we don't want any harm to come to any innocent person, and especially American citizens.
You know, but I've had you on this program, and I ask you, is Hamas's charter says to obliterate Israel. I ask you if they're a terror organization, and you say no.
I don't, Sean.
No. That's a big deal. If you can't admit the obvious, if their charter says to kill Jews and obliterate Israel, that's a terror organization.
Okay, but Sean, here's the thing that I
Why
don't...
won't you say it?
Okay, but can I explain? Now, we have a little time here. First of all, not only is Hamas's charter needs to be revised, not only does it have to be revised, take it Likud. But I don't want to...
You want to revise their charter, or they're the fascists that run that organization?
Okay,
it's not the charter that's the problem, it's the fascists.
Let your brother talk for a little bit. We're going to leave here.
You're killing me.
I know. We're going to leave here as brothers, and we're going to have prayer together.
But you're saying they're not a terror organization.
I'm saying if we start there, and don't start with where all this stuff started. We don't look at Likud. We don't look at what they say. We don't look. I don't want to get into condemning Likud. I don't want to get into Hamas. I want to come together first on the idea, let's save our country and let's save innocent people. And we as Americans...
The only way you're going to start is for people, good people, to challenge a charter that calls for the destruction of a state and an innocent people.
Well, maybe in the final analysis, Sean, if we start at the beginning...
But if you don't do it, you're in the mob.
Your apologetics, though, are actually...
I'm not apologetic, but there are steps that we must take to get to that. Right. That way we'll cut the cake fairly, and we won't be just singling
out. We have a lot more to come. Guys,
okay.
Stay right there. Coming up next tonight, right here on Hannity.
The United States is not and never will be at war with Islam. Islam teaches peace.
All right, for years, President Obama has been saying that Islam is a religion of peace, but some say recent world events may prove otherwise. Our panel will debate that important issue coming up next as we continue a Hannity conversation. Radical Islam and America. Straight ahead.
The United States is not and will never be at war with Islam.
And I'm also proud to carry with me the goodwill of the American people and a greeting of peace from Muslim communities in my country. Assalamu alaikum. Islam is not part of the problem in combating violent extremism. It is an important part of promoting peace. Our enemies respect no religious freedom. Al-Qaeda's cause is not Islam. It's a gross distortion of Islam. The future must not belong to those who slander the Prophet of Islam. ISIL is not Islamic. No religion condones the killing of innocents, and the vast majority of ISIL's victims have been Muslim. We have reaffirmed again and again that the United States is not and never will be at war with Islam. Islam teaches peace.
All right, since his first year in office, President Obama has been parading around the world proclaiming that Islam is a religion of peace. However, right here in America, just last month, this man, Alton Nolan, beheaded one of his co-workers after trying to convert her to Islam and others to Islam. And abroad, convert or die, that movement now fueled by the group ISIS, that terror network, is still very much on the march, which is why tonight we have put together a very distinguished panel to help us answer the important question, is Islam truly a religion of peace? All right, this is where we get into, and I'm going to start with you, Dr. Jasser, into very controversial territory. This, because we're raising a very important question. I look at Boko Haram, I look at ISIS, I look at Al-Qaeda, the Muslim Brotherhood, Islamic Jihad, Hamas, Hezbollah. They all are terrorist organizations that base their belief system on radical Islam, or one might argue the strict interpretation of the Quran. If you read the Quran, I see take neither Christians or Jews for your friends, lots of talk about infidels, lots of talk about jihad, holy war, etc. If you read it literally, is it a religion of peace?
Well, you know, families like mine that came here and felt we could practice our faith more freely in America than in Syria or any other Islamic majority country feel that we have an interpretation of Islam that is consistent with modernity and with liberty. But we would be fooling ourselves. I mean, we need an intervention as a faith to realize that these byproducts are not coming out of thin air. There is a fascist, supremacist interpretation that dominates so much of the media, from Al Jazeera,
and it's growing.
Saudi Arabia.
And
exactly.
It's growing.
Now, the interpretations you gave, though, Sean, are English interpretations of Arabic script. Every faith, I mean, even the Catholic Church had 300 years before lay Christians could read their own script in Latin. Islam has the same type of reformation that needs to go through, where we can interpret our script, our passages. That word for friends actually is awliya. It doesn't mean friends. It means legal sponsors.
But let me ask you this, because as Westerners, as Americans, we look at life for women under Sharia. I don't care if we're talking about Saudi Arabia. I don't care if we're talking about Iran. What do we know in Saudi Arabia? Women can't drive. Women can't be seen in public without men that they're related to. I'll throw this to Bob Beckel. You see in Iran, gays are stoned to death. Women are stoned to death for adultery. 4 male eyewitnesses needed for adultery. Women must cover themselves under Sharia. Yeah.
Well, first of all, let's take a look at the answer to all those is yes, but let's take a look at ISIS for a second. They're the most clear and present danger. The ISIS religious interpretation goes back to the 1720s, when the most radical of Islamists.
Didn't they go back earlier than that?
No. When they took over, when they went to war against the Saudi family, and they ousted the Saudi family.
The Wahhabis.
Yeah, the Wahhabis.
That was mid-18. Yeah.
And the Wahhabis have been and always will be terrorists. If you associate yourself with that brand of Islam, and I think the doctor's exactly right, it's a branding issue here. If people were to take Christianity and assume and pick out in Revelations, as many people do, who attack Christianity and say, look what it says in Revelations, you could say that it's a terrorist.
We don't have a problem with Christians persecuting women and gays, such rigid radical interpretation of the Bible that they justify killing innocent men, women, and children.
Because historically we cleaned that up.
No, we did, Sean. They called the Crusades.
No. I'm talking about today. I'm talking about modern day today.
I'm saying it happened in the Catholic Church, and it's certainly happening in the Muslim world now. But you just can't pass over 40 years history and suggest it didn't happen.
No. I'm suggesting with the modern day threat and what life under all of these groups are under one heading, and that is radical Islamists. They all believe in using their faith to justify their actions to be at war with the infidels or non-believers. That's the difference, and they're willing to kill for it, and their system of justice is oppressive.
All I'm telling you is that in history, we've got other religions doing the same thing. As far as the current thing is going, we can define it any way you want. The problem we have is that how we're doing it on my side of the street is simply bombing. For 25 years in Iraq, hasn't worked. 4 separate presidents. We have not come no understanding about Shia and Sunni and what's eating at part of this.
Should we care that women have no rights under Sharia?
Of course we should. Of course we should, in every country, starting with our own.
But you can't say women have no rights under Sharia.
Well, limited rights. Fair enough.
Limited. But the point I'm saying is, if we don't, Sean, the biggest problem, if we want to solve it, we have to march through it systematically. We can't start way down the line and start picking up and not even understand causes. We have to see the cause and understand the causes and effects.
You cannot fight it now while you're studying.
Let me finish this thought. Go ahead.
I don't mind that, But I'm saying, but if all we're going to look at are effects. No, of course not. There are causes.
The cause is what? The mixture of state and religion.
Well, maybe that is a cause.
Islamic State, all Islamic states are a problem.
But I'm not going to allow you to use that term with me. I'm saying you can say you cannot put an Islamic State with a bunch of crazy people. Islam was
There's no version of the Islamic State that I would ever support, especially as an American, but let alone as a Muslim who believes in liberty.
It's a state of radical, crazy, desperate people.
It's theocracy, so you're endorsing theocracy.
I'm not endorsing it. I'm simply saying let's define it.
Imam, can I ask you,
there were 20 beheadings in Saudi Arabia.
I mentioned all these groups. They're all under a different heading. Boko Haram, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, the Muslim Brotherhood, Islamic Jihad, Hamas, Hezbollah. Are they all, in your view, radical Islamic terrorist groups?
No,
they're not.
No,
they're not.
No, because Sean, you
can't. If you can't acknowledge a simple truth like that, I don't think this conversation can get very far.
Sean, you don't start off in quantum mathematics and ask the third.
All right, let me start one. I'll check them off. Is Boko Haram a terrorist group?
I would agree with that.
Is ISIS a terrorist group?
I would agree.
Is Al-Qaeda a terrorist group?
I would agree.
Is the Muslim Brotherhood a terrorist group?
I would not agree with that.
Okay, Mohammed Morsi referred to the Israelis as descendants of apes and pigs.
He wants a broad
Is Hamas a terrorist group?
I would not agree with that.
Is Hezbollah a terrorist group?
I would not agree with that.
Is the Islamic Jihad a terrorist group?
Islamic Jihad, I don't know much about it.
Is Sharia often used to oppress women and minorities?
Sharia is used in time and conditions
in the practical
in a particular place. Sharia has to stay where it was created, and it has to be revived. If we go back and let me just say this one point. If we go back and take a look at some of the laws we had, don't feed your horse downtown New York City while in the middle of the day. If we take some of that kind of thinking, that's the same thing you're dealing with Sharia law. Things have to be modernized.
Real quick.
Okay, real quick is we've all got to be very careful here about trying to change other religions or what they believe in. But the fact is, Imam, that that religion, your religion, a part of it, has declared war on us, and we have a responsibility as a free nation to eradicate that threat. We don't want to. Obama's right. We're not at war against Islam. We're not at war against you. We're at war with those who use your religion to radicalize their position to kill people.
But is it the religion? But Bob, are we talking about the religion? Or are we talking about some crazy people who come and put their...
So you don't admit we need reform?
You don't admit we need
reform?
I'm not going to disagree with that. But I'm saying...
You are.
But let me finish this point. Just because some radical people come and put 1 foot in the door. Now keep in mind, 1 foot in the door, keeping all of their insanity that they had before they came to Islam, and then... because they can't find intelligent people to join with, and they carry out this insanity.
I've got to take a break. When we come back, this is a straight ahead.
I know that at least 10 ISIS fighters have been caught coming across the Mexican border in Texas.
All right, it's no secret our southern border is not secure, and if Congressman Hunter is right, we're in deep trouble. Stay with us as we continue this Hannity conversation on radical Islam and America. Straight ahead. Welcome back to the special edition of Hannity, a conversation about radical Islam in America. Now, it's no secret that President Obama lacks a sound strategy to defeat ISIS and the terror network overseas, but what about the threat that it poses to this homeland? Now, earlier this week, Republican Congressman Duncan Hunter, he sounded the alarm about terrorists entering the U.S. Watch this.
I know that at least 10 ISIS fighters have been caught coming across the Mexican border in Texas. There's nobody talking about it. Because I've asked the Border Patrol, Greta.
And the Border Patrol, they just let ISIS members come across the border?
No, they caught them at the border. Therefore, we know that ISIS is coming across the border. And if they catch 5 or 10 of them, then you know there's going to be dozens more that did not get caught by the Border Patrol. All
right, still with us to discuss how to prevent extremists from entering this country is our distinguished panel. Bob, I know you're sitting there rolling your eyes and carrying on.
I mean, it's just the most absurd thing I've heard anybody say. This guy's a chairman of a committee.
I went to the border, and I was briefed by border officials. This was the meeting that Obama was supposed to go to when I went with Governor Rick Perry. And one of the things that all of these agents, including former Navy SEALs, told me was they were catching people from Yemen, Syria, Afghanistan, Pakistan. Now, there was another report.
That's been going on for years.
Okay, my point is don't you think it would be in our best interest if we want to not get hit again by terrorists to maybe secure our border?
I don't think that's the place you have to worry about.
You don't want to secure the border?
No, of course I want to secure the border, but I think that's a fool's game, and you keep talking about it as if somehow, you keep talking about this. The Republicans, the right wing, keeps talking about arming the border 12-foot fence, and I've told you over and again, I'll buy the 13-foot ladders. You're silly.
Colonel,
you're being silly.
How bad? Go ahead.
I just want to say that when you listen to Hunter, and you start spreading this fear about ISIS coming through the border of Mexico, it is absurd. Canada would be a place you might want to come through. There is no organized ISIS
I put a fence there, too. Colonel,
Oh, you would put a fence in Canada? That makes some news now. You sure?
Colonel, I fear that what's happening with the spread, ISIS, all the territory they're gaining, everything they're gaining in Syria and Iraq, and then you look at Libya, and then you look at North Africa, then you look at the continent of Africa, and you see this rise of radicalism. It seems to me that there's such a hatred towards the West and Israel that it's not a matter of if, it's when they attack, and I believe it'll be sooner rather than later. I hope I'm wrong.
Okay, first of all, we've already been attacked.
I mean the next attack.
Okay, we've got American soldiers dying all over the world, particularly in Afghanistan and Iraq, and we've got guys being beheaded, and we've also got 9/11. We've been attacked by terrorists.
The next big attack on the homeland
couldn't come from a lot of places. I quite honestly, I think Ebola may be more of a danger right now than ISIS is. And let's get back to this border thing. I'm surprised. Hunter's a combat veteran, okay, and Greta pinned him down. It is inexcusable for him to say what he said about ISIS. It's not, but look, it's not true. They have caught Yemenis and Pakistanis, etc., but they have not caught anybody.
Why would a guy?
John, there's nobody from ISIS.
Colonel,
you can't prove it.
Colonel, I sat in a briefing.
I don't doubt it.
I sat in a briefing.
They didn't say ISIS.
Wait a minute, but they said, why would somebody from Syria and Yemen and Afghanistan and Pakistan be crossing our southern border?
I'm not arguing that they're not crossing. I'm arguing that they said ISIS.
Let me put it in perspective a second.
It's not. Look, you can't be quoting border guards telling you they didn't tell you.
I'm quoting the guys that are on the ground. I'm talking about the guys that are doing the arresting.
My question. They tell you from ISIS or not? Of course they didn't.
No, they didn't tell me. But
it's not about ISIS being a group. It's about the ideology. Let's put it in perspective. 9/11 was 19 guys. Fort Hood was 1 guy. The beheading in Oklahoma, Boston was 2 guys. In ISIS right now, we've got the FBI confirmed last week 12 guys. We've talked about 100. Okay. There are thousands from Europe fighting with ISIS. It's a lot easier, Colonel, to do an attack in the United States than it would be to go to Syria.
60 Minutes claimed he had 100. And then what did he do the next day? He asked American citizens to help identify him.
Okay, so
the
there's
FBI
12.
director. No, but the FBI director was talking on the wrong side of his butt.
Exactly
he didn't have those names.
But if those are terrorists coming over that border, the people didn't arrest them. They should lose their jobs. They're lousy border people. They're lousy special forces.
Listen to the video.
I can't believe you're so naive as to not see this as a whole.
You show me what they've done. You show me. Every country comes across the border.
Hey, Bob, I sat there in a quarter of...
Sat there with a bunch of special forces,
Let me educate you. I've been to the border 10 times. How many times have you been there? Okay. So what I'm telling you is when you see a quarter of a mile away a family from El Salvador just walking across the border, that means we are vulnerable. There's a porous vulnerability. Secure the border. Because the enemies of this country are coming. They are committed to their cause. They're willing to die for the sake of Allah in the promise and seeking the promise of 72 virgins.
This is mostly a Latin American issue. It is a lot of children. ISIS is not coming across there to attack. There will be an attack.
Call it what you want.
You can't say with any certainty what you're saying is accurate.
There will be a major attack.
There's no certainty of what you're saying is accurate.
No, I just said there will be a major attack.
We need to put an end to the idea where you say the president lacks a serious strategy. The president has the best strategy in these intelligence statements that he has made by saying this is not Islam. Do you know how many people he puts in check by making a...
Are you kidding me?
Oh, no,
are you kidding me? They're laughing. The Arab newspapers are laughing at those statements from the president.
The newspapers may be laughing, but there's a billion
the
Muslims,
Iranian newspaper, Press TV.
Muslims that welcome the acknowledgement that they are not a part of this insanity.
The monarchies that are supposedly our allies are calling them Islamists, and we're not.
Standing up and saying that he puts these people in check. How many would be coming across the border?
We got to take a break. Coming up, Christians all over the world being persecuted and killed. We're going to tell you exactly where that's happening. Stay with us as this special edition of Hannity continues. Straight ahead. And welcome Welcome back to the special edition of Hannity, a conversation about radical Islam in America. Now, amid the rise of extremist groups all around the globe, non-Muslims, specifically Christians, are being persecuted for their religious beliefs, and in some places are facing dire threats to either convert or to die. Take a look.
The cost of doing nothing against ISIS is written on the faces of these Iraqi Christians. ISIS forced them to convert to Islam and is using them as slave labor.
ISIS issuing an evil ultimatum to Christians in Iraq: convert, pay a tax, leave, or be killed.
But right now, at this moment, Iraq is not the only country where Christians are currently suffering persecution. Christians in China are facing the most brutal crackdown in decades from their own government.
From 2012 to 2013, the number of Christians martyred around the world nearly doubled. And of those 2,123 Christians martyred in 2013, more than half of them were in Syria alone.
All right, take a look at this map, locating all the places where Christians are being persecuted all around the world. So the question is, how should America respond? Still with us is our very distinguished panel. Imam, let me start with you. Those, for example, in Mosul, we saw all these people, these refugees in the mountains of Sinjar. They were kicked out of their homes. They were told, convert or die. Should we kill those people that are forcing Christians out of their homes, raping Christian women, taking their homes away? Or do you think we could sit down at some table and have a kumbaya moment?
No kumbaya.
Should we kill them?
First, we need to identify them.
Okay.
And we did.
That's ISIS.
All right, it could be ISIS, but just don't put the name Islam to them. Because the greatest witness...
They call themselves Islam.
I don't care what they call themselves.
But wait a minute, they call themselves the Islamic State.
So what?
So who's going to be the excommunicator to determine who's Muslim and who's not?
Allow me to finish, please. Okay.
Should we kill them?
Okay, I'm going to get to that point because
I'm waiting.
We're in agreement. We're in agreement, but I want to be clear who we're killing. The point I'm trying to say is all this persecution against Christians is the greatest testimony against that this is not Islam. Because if you go to the Quran, there's no compulsion in Islam.
Excuse me.
No forcing in Islam.
There is a quote in the Quran that says, take neither Christians nor Jews for your friends.
Oh, well, now even Dr. Jasser, we both cleared that up, that the friend idea of friend is not...
Dr. Jasser, I've read the Quran.
We cleared that up, but it's not saying friend in the context that you're using the word friend.
It talks a lot about infidels, jihad, holy war, Christians, Jews.
But just stick with that idea right there. And I just want to say that the whole idea, the point I want to make is that what is going on in this persecution...
So we should kill them?
Yes.
Kill them.
If they break the law, they break the law, kill them.
By the way, the Islamic State, it says they are the Islamic State.
They can say that. They can say that. Mickey Mouse calls himself Mickey Mouse.
These apologetics are going to continue to cause us not to have a strategy.
Not apology.
If we want, as somebody who loves my faith, I love it in a manner that I want it to be fixed, to reform the twisted interpretations of our
People
scripture.
want to kill you because of your position.
You don't want to reform
if you look at the prisons, hold on a second. If you look at the prisons in most of these countries, minority Christians are being persecuted. Double, triple, and quadruple that. 10, 20 are moderate Muslims like myself who are in prison because they fought against the
Wait 1 second. This is finally drawing the line with me. I have been speaking out about this because I am an evangelical Christian. Under the banner of Islam, not nice ISIS or anything, they have killed Coptic Christians. Then leaders of your religion, moderates, have never had the guts to say a word. You may have, but you're all alone, which only indicates to me, where are they? That ridiculous crowd you've got out, and that crowd you got out there, which is a bunch of apologists.
Absolutely, they're apologists.
Well, then,
they're not.
Where are you? You don't. When it takes Bob Beckel to talk about the way Islam refused to speak up when the death and mutilation of Christians who were there before Islam.
Well, Bob, put that fire in your belly at the Democratic Party for not giving the Islamists
I don't think. Listen, David Cameron was the first one that had some courage to say it. Obama should have said it. A lot of people should have said it. But good God, you people should have said it. You should have said it.
You're telling me you people?
Yes.
I'm the one who's at the tip of the spear in this battle, and you're telling me that I'm behind you.
Hey, Bob.
Apologetic.
Bob, let me stick up for Dr. Jasser. He has fatwas on his head for speaking out against radicalism.
I'm saying that's fine. I want to know how many doctors there are out there.
Then not enough.
If you mislabel this, you're going to cause a clash of civilization that's going to marginalize.
Hold on.
That's going to marginalize.
Can you name me 100 of you in the United States?
It's American Islamic Leadership Coalition. We have 20 different leaders of Muslims that you all ignore, and you pay attention to the OIC lobby of CARE, MPAC, and Islamic
and you guys spoke it out.
No, he's agreeing with you.
I know.
He agrees with you.
What I'm saying is, when you say this, that's fine, except your religion has condoned this happening.
Dr. Jasser, hang on. Let me see if I can settle this between you. You agree that Muslims are too quiet about radicalism.
Absolutely.
And you agree these groups have not spoken out. And you believe, tell Bob.
It's not radicals, it's moderates who've not spoken out.
Well, that's what he's saying. He's saying
why haven't you? Because they're cowards.
Absolutely. And the reason they're cowards, they continue to be cowards.
It starts with the Saudi crown family who are bought and paid for by the Wahhabis. It talks of anybody who's a leader of a Muslim country who purports to be a non-radical Islamist.
Will you join me in preventing us from giving them a pass? You're giving moderates a pass.
I'm doing what moderates? I'd like to see the moderates that are out there fighting with me, and I'm a Christian.
Absolutely, and we need to light a fire under the feet of every moderate Muslim that doesn't want imams and clerics telling them what Islam is and what Islam is.
I've admired what you've done.
Dr. Jasser,
nobody has done it.
Is this a result of this interpretation of the Quran? In other words, Muhammad is a controversial figure. I mean, if I were to mention certain things right now about Muhammad's life, a lot of people would want to kill me. If we talk about his wives, if we talk about the age of his wives, if we talk, right? Am I wrong?
And I think Islam needs to go through what America went through when it rejected theocracy. You had the Jeffersons, the Thomas Paines, and others who took back that our rights were endowed directly from our Creator, and Islam can go through that same modernization.
Are there any issues about Muhammad that trouble you?
Not in the way I was told the stories, but the narrative of Muhammad can be modernized so that certain aspects that were possibly fit for the 7th century can be modernized. But if you demonize the messenger of what we believe is the word of God, that's not a reform, Sean, that would ever work.
Let me get some
But you can say that it's
Let me give you some reality of this. Sean and the others are rightfully upset that Christians are being prosecuted and it should not be allowed. But the problem I've got with it is that that's U.S. soldiers going how many places in the world do you want? We don't have a lot of them. So if we're going to react to this kind of criminality, soldiers going back into combat and
the war of ideas.
No, it's more than a war of ideas.
I think
it's much more.
Listen, I think Benjamin Netanyahu nailed it. He said there was a battle for the master race. This is now, I think, on the same level of evil as Nazism. Those that buy into radical Islam, a master religion. Convert or die is about a master religion.
As a class between modernity and medievalism.
He didn't say about Islam and the West. We got to take a break. More Hannity.
That the war in Iraq was wrong?
No, because more Hannity after the break. Welcome back to the special edition of Hannity, a conversation about radical Islam in America. We continue with our panel here. Where do we end this? Because I don't see how you reconcile. If you can't admit that Hamas, Hezbollah, Muslim Brotherhood are radical jihadist groups, I don't think we're ever going to reconcile that. Because they're terrorist groups that teach those followers about jihad, about holy war, about infidels.
But you refuse to recognize cause and effect. And let me just jump back for one thing real quick.
You're not going to answer my question. You want to jump back to your question.
But no, I want to jump back, and then I want to answer mine, too. You know, I want to take a little more time.
You want to stay away from my question. Answer your question.
Okay, right. But here's what I want to say. First of all, I want to give credit to Fox News, okay?
Yes, sir.
Because coming back to what Bob was saying about speaking out, one thing I can say Fox News has done is given us a forum where we can at least have the discussion whether we agree on everything or not.
You're very welcome to be here, and I appreciate you for coming on.
No, I appreciate you making it possible, not only for me, on behalf of all the Muslims out here who would like to have a voice. And I'm saying one of the things we don't have is an opportunity to have a voice. Imam W.D. Muhammad, when the 911 came, he hired a studio and hired a professional television person to do tapes and send them around to all the channels to let them know how outraged we were about this and how supportive we were of our country.
I would argue not enough people spoke out.
Yes, you can't get around Bob's point.
I can still send you those tapes through.
Yeah, but you can't get around Bob's point.
No,
religion has been massively quiet.
There needs to be more But I'm saying, but to say
the moderates have been quiet.
Muhammad has championed this.
What's our legacy going to be for our country, Imam?
Part of Hamas is political. Part of Hezbollah is political. But part of Hamas and part of Hezbollah are also terrorists.
Exactly right.
You cannot say, yes, it's a political arm of Hamas and a political arm of the Muslim Brotherhood, but also a part of them is
terrorists. Sean gives me a broad brush.
No, but
Sean doesn't give me a brush.
No, but you're giving a broad brush back. And you're too smart to do that.
You know, we have a fundamental question here is it really the job and the responsibility of the United States of America to eradicate radical Islam?
No, first of all, we can't do it.
Do we have the ability to do it? We don't.
Not by ourselves.
Do we have the treasury to do it? We do not. Do we have a responsibility to protect our citizens? Yes. Israel, yes. But beyond that,
hey, Bob, you
if it hadn't been for the war in Iraq, this would not have happened.
You made the point tonight. That is, they're at war with us. We didn't declare this war. They're at war with us. The 9/11 Commission report.
15 countries to get
the 9/11 Commission report said they were at war with us. Right now, they're beheading us. They're killing Americans, and they're saying they're going to raise their Islamic flag in our White House and meet us in New York.
As you two guys argue this, understand the word's going to have to come out of somebody's mouth. It's called draft. Because you want to do what you want, John, that's fine, or Bob, but the idea is draft. We don't have the size of the military
if we don't
to do that. I'm talking draft.
But this is the 21st century Cold War. You don't need, yes, you need military to defeat ISIS, Hamas, the radical groups, Hezbollah.
We don't have the ideological
war. The ideological war is about
exit question for everybody. Quick answer. Is radical Islam the next modern Nazis that the world is going to have to fight? In other words, is it becoming that big a threat? Bob Beckel.
If the world were willing to join with us without
yes or no, quick.
The answer to that is, I'm not going to, it's too simplistic. We do not have the military to do what you're asking us to do.
Jasser,
radical Islam's the tip of the iceberg. Political Islam is the ideological threat. It's the Cold War of the 21st century, and we need to work at the tip of the iceberg. At the tip is moderate, anti-Islamist Muslims.
Radical people who will do the terrible things that they are doing, yes, but not, you can't attack the Islam.
We're already at war.
We're already at war.
Absolutely, we're at war.
I agree with you. All right, guys, good to see you all.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Great hour.
For doing this.
And as always, we have more Hannity coming up right after the break. Stay with us. And that is, unfortunately, all the time we have left this evening. I want to thank all our great panel for a great discussion tonight. Thank you so much. Thanks for being here, and I hope you have a great night.